Good morning, gorgeous. Good morning, gorgeous. Don't forget to smile. As you look radiant as you are the queen of your Nile, wake up, beautiful. It's time to spread your wings. Open up your window and hear the songbirds as they sing. Good morning, good morning, good morning, gorgeous. We thank you so much for joining us today. I am Larissa Williams,
And I'm Sharonda Steele.
and we like to thank you. And we have Miss Dr. Soraya Matthews joining us today on the Good Morning Gorgeous
Come through,
podcast. Thank you,
doctor.
Dr. Matthews, for
Come
joining us
through,
today.
doctor.
I love it. I love it.
Thank you so much, Dr. Matthews, for joining us today. We just greatly appreciate you taking the time out of your busy schedule and joining us today on the podcast.
Thank you for having me.
You're very welcome. We're going to start off. First off, we just want you to let our listeners know and tell our listeners a little bit about yourself. Who is Soraya Matthews?
Oh my. I'm gonna try to summarize that in a couple of seconds, right?
Okay.
So, first and foremost, I'll say Soraya is a wife. My husband, we've been married for 16 years to Timothy. A mother of 4 beautiful children, 3 out of the house and 1 more to go. So, we all ages there. I would say that I'm definitely a Christian follower of God. I'm going to just put that out there.
Amen.
I also see myself as an advocate for equity. That is something that I'm most passionate about. I think people can see it dripping from me when they see me walk by or when I talk, when I say words, which don't always make people comfortable, but that's who I am. I'm an educator. I've been in education for over 20 years. I'm also an entrepreneur. And as far back as I can remember, I've been some type of a business owner or selling something on my own or doing something on my own. So I think I just have that entrepreneur spirit. And then lastly, what I'll say is I'm that person who will always challenge status quo.
I love that.
So that's me in a nutshell.
I love that. Always repeat that again. Always challenge
the status quo.
I love that.
I think it's important that as people we continue to evolve. We can't just sit idle and just
I love it.
Sit in it.
And it goes with the advocate for equity too, right? Because you can't be an advocate for equity if you don't challenge it. That's exactly the whole premise of equity is you have to challenge the status quo, because somewhere in those lines there's a relate to equity as a systematic issue that has to be dismantled to create a space for everyone.
That's
so you have to challenge it, right?
That's exactly right. You can't do the work of equity without change.
Yes.
I say that all the time. You have to have change. You have to have innovation when you're doing the work of equity. If you're continuing to do things the way they've always been done, you're not doing the work of equity. you're just staring and admiring the problem.
Yes. No, absolutely right. Absolutely right. And you're currently the chief officer for DEI. Can you tell us a little bit more about your role, right?
Sure can. You left off the B. That's the important part. So the chief DEIB officer for Fayette County Public Schools, and DEIB is diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging. The belonging piece is really that new word on the scene. A lot of people are very familiar.
I was going to ask you about that.
Yeah. Yes. Yes. A lot of people are familiar with DEI. I mean, and as you've seen, even that has evolved, right? Because it started out as diversity, and then it went to diversity and equity, and then it went to diversity, equity, and inclusion. And now it's diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging, right? So as things continue to evolve, the work that we do, the people that we support the most, our most vulnerable students in the school system, but people at large in society, It just continues to evolve. The work never ends.
No, yeah. And the belonging definitely fits within, we go back to the idea of equity, right? Being
Right.
able to not only be in a space, but feel like you're part of that space.
That's exactly
Not
right.
just your add-on. Like you're not an add-on. And
not an afterthought.
yeah, if you have to walk into a room and scan it first to feel a level of comfort, then there isn't a sense of belonging.
That's exactly right. And we want people to be able to not only walk in that room and, like you said, be a part of it, but even change it.
Absolutely.
Right? Because you're there. That's the most critical piece of this work, is that recognizing that if I can show up as my most authentic self, whatever the final product is going to be, I'm going to be seen in that. I'm going to be represented in that. And therefore I'm changing the space because I'm in it.
Absolutely.
So I mean, that really is what the belonging work is all about. And that's what we've started with this year. We've done most of our focus. I mean, we've done a lot of things this year, but most of our focus has been really around belonging and what that looks and feels like for students and adults in our spaces.
No, I love it. Why DEI work? Why belonging? Why go into this field?
It's funny that you asked that question, because on a professional level, as in my day-to-day job, I just really got into this work last year in this position. But in my passion, in my work that I've always done on the side for years now, I've been doing the work of equity in some way, in some shape, form, or fashion, but never had a chance to do it in my 9 to 5, so to speak, right? But it's never really 9 to 5. It's really 24/7. So, but I think the why for me has always been rooted and grounded in how I was brought up. It goes back to things that I experienced as a child. I grew up in Mississippi, which need I say anymore? The experience there as a child growing up, poor, single family home, single parent home, all the things I experienced as a kid, all of those barriers that really could have taken me out at any moment. When I reflect upon those and I think about how can I now remove some of those barriers for other people. I mean, that's just always been something in the back of my mind. Is like, I was able to come through it, thank God, not unscarred, because I've got a lot of scars to show, but how can I help prevent the next generation from having to go through some of those exact same things so that they can continue to flourish? I'm thinking about my own children, my 4. But then someday in the far, 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 far future, my grandchildren, how do we make this world a better place for everybody so that everyone can walk in their passion and be who they want to be? Even at the age that I'm in now, I think about my path, and I can't say that I'm truly in a place where I can walk in my authenticity each and every day. And this is 2023.
Right.
Right.
So, the work is there, and the work is always going to be there. So someone has to be the people who are fighting that fight. And I've always just had that altruistic spirit that I wanted to be the person that was challenging. I don't know where, I would say I would probably blame my mom or my dad, to be honest, because it's always just been at me. It's like, it's just, if something isn't right, you have to stand up against it. And that's my mindset.
Yeah.
And I feel like when they created the position, because we didn't have the position prior, did we? We didn't have that.
Right.
And I feel like they chose the right person. When I found out, because you and I, we are AAU basketball moms.
Yes.
That's how we met, was through AAU basketball. But I feel like we've been able to get to know each other a little bit better since, because it's only 2 years. It'll be 2 years in for me at Fayette County Public Schools. But just within these 2 years, to see how God has been using you, but within your new position, that you're the right person for that.
Oh, thank you.
And I really, truly, really, truly believe that. And I feel like with you being in the position, I feel like that it's going to continue to grow. And just your presentation itself, your professionalism and everything will help draw more people to being open to be a part of DEIB. I truly, truly believe that.
I sure hope so. Thank you for saying that. I do appreciate that. There was an equity office in Fayette County for years. Even, I mean, I've been in Fayette County now 8 years, and there's always been an equity office. But again, as things have evolved, our new office starting last summer, just took on a whole different persona, so to speak, where we really focus on, again, that belonging piece for everybody and making sure that everyone knew that they were a part of this work. We really came out strong with our message from the beginning that DEIB doesn't belong to our office. We may be the face of it that you see, but DEIB belongs to everybody.
Right.
Everyone. We set the stage. We said, this is your work. Every principal, this is your work. Every teacher, this is your work. And every student, this is your work. Let us empower our kids. We've really worked to decentralize what DEIB looks like so that it's not just an office, but it's the work of our district that everybody is doing. And that vision came from our new superintendent. And, he gave me that challenge and I accepted it with open arms and willingness, and been running through it ever since. So that just really is how we chose to do business, is that we all own this work. And we knew that if it just resided in our office, it was never going to get to the point where we needed it to be. We had to decentralize the thought process around DEIB work. And that's been a lot of our work this year.
So good.
Well, as we had mentioned in a previous podcast and I see that with Fayette County overall, where starting in this new position and how it has grown, that it's the togetherness, within the community. Not only is it within the district, but it's now out there in our school system. And so because there's so many different, families of different languages that we have and different nationalities that we have, and Fayette County is really, incorporating so many different things. When I think about that, from when I first started to now, even the office where we have all these different language speakers in-house.
Yes.
In-house, they go out in the community to the schools that be able to help the families get over some barriers that they had prior, because now we at Fayette County has incorporated it within the school system.
That's right. Yeah, we have our language ambassadors who go out and help and support families. Because as you know, those who are new, not only to Lexington, our community, but new to the United States, understanding school systems. Let me just say, I've been in the school system for almost 20 years, and sometimes I still don't understand things about the school system.
Right.
So when we talk about our families who are new to our educational system, we have to ensure that we have the supports that are there to make sure, again, that all barriers are removed, that our students, and we call them our students, they are our students, right? That our students are able to be the absolute best versions of themselves, that there's nothing that prevents them from engaging authentically in the instruction in the classroom, that there's nothing that's preventing them from showing up and being who they want to be or who they choose to be that day. Or even reaching their highest potential, right? Which is what we call the portrait of a graduate. Our job is to make sure that we're working with families to help remove those barriers, that we're supporting and uplifting our students to engage in instruction in an authentic way. And I mean, that's what you just said it. I mean, it's Fayette County's, it's a new way forward. That's kind of our tagline for the year, for our strategic plan, our 5-year strategic plan. And it truly feels like a new way forward. Yeah. Which is that's the difference, right? Does it really feel like it, or if we just kind of put the words to it? Because that happens sometimes. It's like, okay, it's nice and it's flashy, but does it actually feel different?
Yeah.
And from being in Fayette County, like I said, 8 years, I can tell you that it feels different. There are things happening. There are conversations that are being had that I know didn't take place prior to. There are supports that are being put in place to catch our kids from falling through the gaps. That doesn't mean that we have, we've not succeeded 100%, but we're definitely seeing the change and we're feeling the change, and we're going to continue that momentum of doing that type of work.
That's great. And I'm guessing there's some form of teacher training, staff training embedded in that also, right?
Absolutely. We have professional learning really at all levels. And as well as I know, your school leader sets the tone of the building. So we start out our professional learning, anything around not just DEIB, but all of our offices starts with our principals. We do professional learning sessions with our principals, and then depending upon what the topic is, the expectation would be that the principals are taking it back to their schools, but it may also be that some folks from our office or from other offices are going into the schools and providing that professional learning to teachers, either through their PLCs, their professional learning communities, or through staff meetings. Sometimes, as you know, time is always a factor in one way or another. So sometimes it can be an email resource or an electronic resource. We have created a electronic professional learning library of books that teachers can check out, and it's all electronic. I mean, they can literally read the book on their screen, on their phone, whatever, that they have free resources to. So we really thought about how we can provide professional learning 24 hours a day, regardless of whether or not we're face-to-face to a teacher, or if a teacher just needs to look up some term or something, some concept, that they have resources at their fingertips.
That's good. And I wonder too, outside of school districts, we'll have people who will either hear or watch this podcast from all over. Those that may not be as familiar with the work, but they know they want to change, they know they want to start to make changes. Where would you suggest would be a good start for someone who's not connected to the school district that may say, hey, this is important to me too, and I want to try to start putting things in motion to make a change in my community?
Well, I say to anyone, before you make a change in the community, get to know the community. So I would say that's always the starting point. And if it's someone who's within the community, that is absolutely the right way. That is what you would want, some grassroots efforts. But then again, you have to also connect to others, right? So one thing that I did early on was what I call empathy interviews. And even though as a Black woman, I understand this space from having to live in it, right? But through my empathy interviews, I got to understand the space from the perspectives of others as well. And I think that in order to do this work, you have to be able to not only do that introspective work and understanding and knowing who you are, but also do that extrospective work where you are connecting with others and asking about the perspective of other people and how things are impacting them. So I guess that's just that educating yourself. It's making sure that the first step is just knowing and understanding what the work is. It's very easy to go into this work with assumptions, with assuming that you know what the answer is, assuming you know what the needs are, or assuming how that you can solve the problem. But those, what I call empathy interviews, really gets to the root of the problem.
Yeah.
And, it doesn't simplify it. Sometimes it's, people go in thinking about a Band-Aid, and I'm thinking about the image. I'm sure you've seen it, of the kids at the baseball field on the boxes. One is on one box, and so you've seen that image, right? I hate that image because I think it is not equity. It doesn't show, even when you shift boxes, that doesn't mean you have equity. And that, I think a lot of times people think, though, that it is an easy solution of just moving resources around.
Just shift the boxes over. And it's like,
yeah,
no,
like
that's
just
not
shifting.
it.
And that's not it. That's not it. You need to get
I call it a pacifier. You're just pacifying the problem, but you're not really removing the barrier. which is
Right.
the real reason of why those boxes are needed to begin with.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's exactly right. And I call it putting a Band-Aid on a broken arm like that. That's just, it's not gonna fix the arm.
Exactly.
So I think that's what I would say. Someone who wants to start this work, passion, of course, has to be there. You have to, because this is not easy work, and it is not going to be one where you get a lot of sleep at night. It will keep you up. But I think passion has to be there. So I'd say knowledge, the passion, and then I'd say just do it, do work. It's not enough to sit around and talk about it. It's not enough to sit around and look at data. It's not enough to say, I've read this book. It's not enough to say, I've talked to people. The answer to the question is, what have you done?
Yes.
Or what are you doing? What's the action that's
good.
taking place? How are you leading others? How are you adding others into this work? How are you continuing to grow the capacity? Because one thing we know for sure is none of us can do it alone. We have to make sure others become part of this work. So, I mean, I think those would be the three things I would say: passion, the knowledge, and then doing something.
Yeah, that's good.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a facilitator here for it's called Idea Circles, where you look through that lens, but you do it through storytelling. So you bring folks from all walks of life together, and you just facilitate a conversation where they get to share in their own stories, their own experiences, and from that, people really do get to experience or hear from someone that has gone through specific challenges and I mean, I tell you, every single time you learn something new. Even, I find myself, I thought, yes, I love the idea of facilitating. I'll go in and we'll do this, and this. And I always walk out where I've learned something. And it has just been an incredible experience. And I'm learning more and more that understanding our stories, right? Hearing those stories has really been a great way to create some impact, because I think it's very easy for people to not be able, if we don't relate, then I can count out anything that you're experiencing. But once I'm able to truly hear your story and I can connect to it in whatever way, then it hits me and I go, I get it now. Like it's those aha moments. I get it now. So I found like utilizing storytelling and sharing of experiences on both levels.
Absolutely.
I'll talk to some women, white women that have grown up in very rural kind of areas where they didn't have any people of color, Black folks in their area. They never grew up with them. And then saying, but I knew the things that I was hearing was wrong. I couldn't connect it until I left. But something in me was saying, you shouldn't be saying that. Like, and hearing those stories have just been really phenomenal.
Wow.
Yeah.
I would love to hear more about that. That seems awesome.
Yeah.
I think that you're exactly right. I think that it makes it real, right? It really does allow people to see that things that other people are experiencing is real. And we all have to be very cognizant of that our story, our experiences is just that. It's ours. But hearing it from others and hearing those perspectives, I think that has to be a part of the work. Absolutely. I love it.
Right. And I feel like the program that Berea College had on Sunday, the monumental moments, was fantastic because there was diversity there. I mean, when we showed up, and I showed up to see the diversity of ages and the diversity in the different nationalities that were there, the different religions that were there on Sunday, I was totally surprised, but it was so awesome to see that and to be able to share my story really publicly for the first time. Being able to share my journey was a blessing, because there were several people coming up to me afterwards, because and our stories are not for us to retain and keep. Our stories are for us to be able to share and help in someone else's healing.
That's exactly right.
So, and I really appreciate Dr. Steele for allowing me to come and speak on Sunday, to be open, to share my truth, to share my story, and prayerfully and hopefully that my story was able to help some of those women in the room, because I had several people coming up to me afterwards. So, you know, and it's always uncomfortable because you don't know how people are going to react to your story, you know, because I always used to be like, okay, I'm not going to share my story because I don't know what they're going to think about me, or what are they going to say or go tell somebody else. That's the way that I used to feel. But God said, my story is not my own.
Wow.
It's not my own. So the things that I have gone through is not my own. It's for me to share with other people. And I mean, it was just a wonderful experience. And I pray that that continues, that that is something, because it was the first annual monumental moments, that that is something that will continue and to grow moving forward.
It will. And I think you said something, and almost to connect what both of you were saying, you know, where you going, you know, how do I share my story, or what will people think? I think that's why the B now is so important, that they've added the B, the belonging, because as those that are professionals in these fields and in the areas, you know, we have to utilize our resources. We have to utilize our advantages or influence to create the space so people feel okay with being able to share it.
That's
right.
And
in doing that, others will receive the blessing or will learn something from what you share. I'm grateful for Sunday. We have a very diverse group of students that I work with here. I love to say we are the most diverse living space on this campus, because we are. And I think opportunities like what happened on Sunday at that brunch is just the start of it, where you have so many people there. She said varying levels of everything was represented in that space. But for everyone to come together in this common theme of celebration, hearing stories, and I guarantee you, if we had passed that mic around, it probably we would have blew the ceiling off the building, with everyone being able to share, because there are so many experiences centered around that room that others would benefit from. But I think the B, that's why they've added the B, because it's so vital to the work.
It is. It really is. And it does, when you think about too, and to Larisha's point, how vulnerable you feel in that moment to share your story, right? I mean, that's just, and I don't know if that's your experience, but I'm telling you, for me, it makes me feel so vulnerable. But, you know, there's that but. But when I share it, I feel so empowered. I feel like I'm also empowering others. Like that my story, I've lived it. So I'm on the other side of it. I'm continuing to live it, of course, but there are things that I've gone through that I can share with others now and say, you can make it too. That, you know, you're not in this alone, that there are things that we're all going through, that we're processed together. And like you said, I wish I could have been there, but I'm sure, like you said, if you were to pass around the mic, Dr. Steele, golly, you probably, man, I mean, it's just moments in the making, right? It's just, I love it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you said it earlier where you talked about the wounds, right? All the times I say, I have the battle wounds so that you don't have to have these. It doesn't mean you won't have your own, but I'm here so that you don't get these. Like I've gone through this so that you don't have to. And that's why I'm here to support you, to help you navigate some of those challenges. And it won't say that doesn't mean you won't have your own, but you know, at least you won't have your own plus these, because I'm here to help you navigate this piece of your life. So yeah, I mean, I think when we think about DEIB work, because we can't forget the B, I think it's vital to our future, because now we're instilling that in all of our kids. And they're going to understand measures and just much more than what their parents and grandparents understood. And then that's how you begin to completely change systems, because these elementary schoolers will be making decisions for us. And that's how you really begin to start to truly dismantle systems But it has to start now with our little ones. And how do we make sure they understand this message and how important it is to their growth development and to their community and to just our overall world?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I like that you started talking about, as you mentioned, dismantling systems, because I often say it is going to start with our kids. Our kids, if we can empower them, give them the tools that they need to continue to lead this work. Quite frankly, many of our kids are already leading this work. Yes. But then also recognizing as adults that we each have a part in that system. Mm-hmm. I often say to people, you know, they talk about a system as if it's this omnibus, this thing that doesn't really exist out there, mm-hmm. that no one has control over, right? But the truth of the matter is people make up the system. Yes. Each and every one of us make up all of us, right? And so at what point do we decide no more? We're not going to be a part of that system. We're going to do something different. We're going to dismantle that system. We're going to create a system of equity. We're going to create a system of belonging. You know, when we can take that ownership and say, you know, it's not the system. Right. Yeah. The system is there, but the system is designed to do exactly what it's going to do. It's going to uphold itself by the people who are in it. Yes. So if we step out of it, it will dismantle. Yes. So good. So that's good. The piece that has to happen. Yeah. This is good. I literally could be on it, have this kind of conversation all day. Oh, me too. All day. Absolutely. We don't have all day. We're actually already pretty much up with our time. But I really could have this conversation all day, because I think, like you said before, it's one thing to talk it. It's another thing to walk what you talk. And then how do we start putting action behind the things that we discuss to really, truly start making that change that we have to make? That's right. Mm-hmm. But we do have so many others, people that look like us and many that do not understand. They just don't know. They have blinders on. So like those of us that do know, like, you know, we have to be able to start sharing messages, stories, making, you know, networking, connecting with people so that they can understand it and begin to even teach differently to their children and so on and so forth. I really could have this conversation all day, but I know, Larissa, we don't have all day.
I know. This is just something that just dropped in my spirit as I'm listening to both of you speak. And so I'm going to be obedient and just say it. And it is, you know, I can't remember which one of you said it, talking about the wounds. We may have the wounds and the scars, but when we become a part of DEIB, where we are belonging, those wounds will begin to fade. When they may be there visibly, our wounds, based on how our posture is or our demeanor, but the more we become involved, those wounds will begin to fade. Our posture, we can stand tall, and we will feel like we belong. Yeah. And we will make other people feel like they belong. Those wounds will begin to fade and our posture will change. Yeah. I truly, truly believe that.
Oh, absolutely. I do too. I believe it 100%.
100%.
Yeah, that's so good. I was going to share a story after that, but I think that's a great way to get ready to wrap us up. Like, I don't want to go behind that, even though I do have a story that goes with that. I'm not going to share it. I am not. We'll be talking for another 20 minutes. Save that for another time. We'll have to have you back on and continue that conversation.
I'd be happy to. This has been awesome.
Yes. Thank you so much, Dr. Matthews, for being with us today. And and then showcasing your bluegrass design earrings that you purchased. I really appreciate that. And we really appreciate you taking the time out of your busy schedule, joining us today. So as we always end our show, we always like to thank our listeners and viewers for being a part of this conversation today. But as we always say, find yourself,
believe in yourself, and love yourself.
We like to thank you so much for joining us today, and we see you next time. Bye-bye.